Hey, what is up everyone, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I have a little exciting project that we are going to be building. We are going to make a tiny PNG clone. Not necessarily the looks of the front end, but more the functionality behind optimizing images and resizing images. So if you are not familiar with TinyPNG, we would upload an image of, let's say, 5 megabytes, and this would upload it to a server. It would optimize and resize the image to a more efficient size for the web, and you can re-download it, and it would probably take a 5 megabyte image all the way down to somewhere in the kilobytes range, which is quite handy. Specifically if you build front ends and your client's website has a lot of images that you need to optimize. Most of the images I've worked with before are greater than 5 megabytes, so I need to use the Pro. But I am a developer, so I thought let's build a similar tool that does the same thing. So like I said, we are not copying the UI, we are just copying the functionality. So here we have our free TinyPNG, and if we were to upload a few images, so let's actually go ahead and choose some images. If we take a look at these images size, so I have 5 images here, and if I were to select all 5 of them and view properties, we can see in total these images are 173 megabytes. So if your client has these images on their website, it's going to take a lot of data, and your mobile users are not going to be very happy about that. So what our software is going to do, if we take a look at one image, let's just view the property size, we can see it's around 33 megabytes for all of them. So I'm going to select all 5 of them, and then we're going to hit submit. And what's happening in the background, we are uploading these images to a Node Express server, and then we're using a package called Sharp to optimize these images and resize them to a set width. And then once it's done, it returns us the links to download these images. So if I click on these links and I just download all of them right here quickly. Okay, so there we have all the images downloaded. And if I go to this directory, we see all of these images, and you can see in the side how small they have become. So if we open this up and view the properties, we can see all the way from 173 megabytes to only 2.2, which is a drastic improvement. So the images still look pretty good. You can change the settings as we go in the project build, but this is still good enough quality for a website to see exactly what is happening. So that is what we're going to be building today. If you're excited, keep watching, give this video a like, and subscribe for more videos just like this. Let's get building. Okay, so let's head over to our text editor or IDE, and let's start initializing this project. So like I mentioned, it's a Node Express server, and we're using the Sharp package. So let's first, I'm going to use yarn, you can use npm. I'm going to first initialize a node project in our YouTube TinyPNG. This will generate a package JSON for us. So we can see we have a package JSON right here. And let's actually install the dependencies for this project. So first off, we're going to need yarn, add, and we're going to need Morgan. Or let's start with the basics. Express. We're going to use Sharp to optimize our images. Then we're going to have a tool that gives us some logging, which is Morgan. And let's start off with these. So in a new terminal, I'm just going to open this up. And what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start making the project directory. So first we're going to have our source folder. And inside of our source folder, so I'm going to cd into the source folder. Let's actually zoom up this a bit. I'm going to cd into my source folder, and in here I want to create a few directories. First we're going to have our routes, we're going to have our controllers, and we're going to have our middleware. Okay, and then we'll have a utils folder, and I think that is it for now. Then we can create our index.js file to start our Express server. So if we look in the source directory, we can see we have our project directory set up. So let's actually start by adding files into the routes. So we have our index.js for our routes. We can add into our controllers our index.js, and in the middleware, let's leave that for now. Okay, so in our index.js, in the source directory, we initialize our Express server. I like to use the module imports, so I'm just going to head over to my package.json, and I'm going to say the type should not be common.js but module. So with these dependencies installed, let's actually go ahead back to our terminal 1 and let's install our dev dependencies. So we're going to need yarn add --dev, and for our dev dependencies we want nodemon. And for my IDE purposes, I'm gonna, if you have VS Code, it would automatically have these IntelliSense, but I'm gonna add types for Node and types for Express. And I think Morgan as well. So let's say types Morgan. So feel free to build this in TypeScript as well. Just for simplicity's sake, I'm just gonna do it in JavaScript. I don't want to set up any compilation part now. Okay, so we have, let's take a look, package.json, our dev dependencies are installed. We need a start script for our application, so let's head over and add scripts, and we're going to add the start script, which will be nodemon, and this will go into the source folder and run the index.js file. So let's go ahead and build out our server. So we're going to say import express from express. Then we're going to create our app, which will just be an Express app. And then on this app, we want to listen on port 3000. So you can have any port running here. So here we're just going to say server is running on port 3000. Okay, and let's just create one basic route, just a get route. And we call it hello, and in here we're just going to return with our request and response that we get from this function. We get this nice IntelliSense from the IDE. If you use the types, then it would give you these insights. So now we can say res.send, or let's just send some JSON with a message foo_bar. Let's just keep it simple. Okay, so now we have our basic Express app, very simple. So let's go ahead and run our yarn start script, and this will use nodemon to launch the source.js, and here we can see there's already one listening. So I actually didn't kill my example project, so let me go and do that because it's running on the same port. I'm going to close that up. Make sure that's down. Okay, let's try again. And we can see we are now running, server is running on port 3000. And if I were to go to the browser and I were to go to localhost 3000 /health or hello, we can see we have JSON foo_bar. Okay, so our API is up and running. The next part we can quickly start with is actually getting the front end to work, or to get sent to or served. So let's do that. First, I want to add a few middleware. So in Express, we add middleware by using the use on the app, the use function. And to this use function, we can pass any other handler or any other piece of middleware. So one piece of middleware that we would use is Morgan. Okay, and Morgan is just a middleware that logs out your requests, and this is great just to see what's going on. So we can use the dev mode. So there's different formats you can use: tiny, combined, common, short. So I'm just going to use the dev mode. It prints out sufficient amount of information about the request. Okay, and because we are going to be sending information, or in this case images, to our Express server, we are going to need another package to handle this multi-part form data that gets sent to our Express server. And a very popular one that I have a video on as well, if you would like to go in more depth about it, you can go and check out the video. I'll link it. And we are going to add that as a middleware. But let's actually first download that package. So in the other terminal, I'm going to head back to our root directory. And here I'm just going to say yarn add. And this middleware is called Multer. So I'm going to install this package quickly. And I do believe it has its own types. Let's just install that as well. --dev at type/multer. So once again, if you're not using TypeScript and you're in Visual Studio Code, you don't need to add these type packages. I'm just using a different IDE at this stage, so it requires me to install those types as well, so that the IDE kind of acts as TypeScript, where VS Code actually does this on its own. Okay, so now we have Multer installed. So now we want to actually configure Multer as a middleware. So when we use Multer, so let's import that package. Import Multer from Multer. We have to create the upload or the Multer object. So we can say Multer equal, or the upload object, the upload middleware. So we can say uploads is Multer. So we run the Multer function. And then in here, we provide some options. One of them, which is the important one at this stage, is destination. So we're just going to use Multer local storage. So we're not going to upload this to any other storage service. We're just going to use our local machine to host these files. So we need to provide the directory of the uploads. So this would be the destination. So the destination directory for the uploaded files. So in order to build this in Node, it's always important to use the path module, just to ensure when you deploy, there's nothing going to happen with the paths that might be different. So we're going to use the path module, and we can say upload dir path, and let's construct that path by saying path.join. And in here, we just specify, first off, we want to get the underscore dir name. So underscore dir name, when we use the module type. So when we use this type of module, we can't use underscore dir name because that doesn't exist. For example, if I were to save this and go back to the terminal, we can see it's crashing. Unexpected token. Okay, so here we can say upload dir path. And if we save this, we can see that underscore dir name is not defined in ES module scope. So we need to create some way of still having our underscore dir name. And I spent some time Googling, and that is where I found this little handy script that we can use, or code snippet that we can use. So I'm just going to copy it from over here. So I called this file dir name, and let's paste it in. Paste. So here we have a file that is importing from the URL node package and the path node package. We're getting the file URL to path, and we're getting the dir name from the path as well. So now we are building our own little dir name and file name. So take a look at what's happening here. We have the file name, and then we use the dir name based on the file name, and then we are able to get access to this. So not really 100% sure how to explain what is happening here, but that is all good. So now we're going to use this function file dir name, and we provided some meta about our current file. So we're going to import it in here. So to use dir name, we import this file. We can see it got imported from here, and then we can destructure from the output would be underscore dir name. So now that would work, but to this we need to pass the meta. So we can say, I believe it's import.meta. If you're using CommonJS, you can just use underscore dir name without any issues. Okay, so now we want to point to a specific directory. So currently this file is inside of the source. and I want to create a folder with outside of the source called uploads. So let's go out to one directory and let's create uploads. So if I were to save this, now our uploads middleware actually points to a folder that's not created yet. So let's go ahead and create that. Inside of our terminal, let's head over here and we can say make dir uploads. File already exists. File. Oh, here it is. It already created itself. Okay, so once I refreshed this piece of middleware, Multer went and create this destination folder. Okay, but we want to actually move this out into a middleware because currently it's kind of blocking and we're not going to use it in this part right now. So let's move it out. I'm going to create a new directory called, or a new file called uploads. Let's just call it uploads. So what do we want to do here? Well, we want to have a function that will return the uploads from Multer, the configured uploads middleware from Multer. So let's first copy our Multer import from here. I'm going to take both of these, paste them in here, and let's take this part and paste it in here as well. Okay, so now we have this uploads, which we'll configure to actually be a middleware. So we're going to export default. Let's call it uploads middleware. So let's actually just export it as a named export so we can use a const. And this will be equals to the uploads. And we want to upload an array of images. And to this array, we need to specify the field name and the max count. We don't want to set a max count, so we just want to add a field name. And we're going to call our field files. And you'll see where this becomes important. Is when we submit our front end to a specific route, it's going to look for a multi-part field that is called files. So with this done, we now have our uploads middleware. Okay, so this is all good. We can close this up. Now we're back here in our root express application. We can remove the path import, and we want to actually start using our front end. So let's actually go ahead and do that part. So first off, we need to configure Express to serve public files. So we're going to say app.use, and we can say express static, and we need to point it to our uploads file or our public file folder. So we're going to create in the source directory, we create a new directory, and let's call it public. And in here, we're going to have our JS, our HTML, and our CSS. So no frameworks, we're just keeping it simple, just like this. And inside of our JS, we're going to have a JS file called scripts. And then in the HTML, we can create a new HTML file, just call it home. And then in our CSS, we can create a new CSS file called styles. Okay. So in our HTML file, we have our boilerplate set up, and we're just going to call this free TinyPNG. And inside of the head document, we want to load our script, JavaScript, and our CSS. So let's do that. We can say scripts of the source tag, and we want to point to the JS file and the scripts, and we want to defer this. And then we want to link our style sheet. Once again, we can go into the CSS and pick the styles.css. Let's just add a h1 in here and say free TinyPNG. So this is it for now. Now we want to serve this file through Express. In order to do this static, we need to provide it a root string. And this root string should point to our public folder, because this is telling Express that we are able to access any of these from the browser. So we first of all going to need to build a path again. So let's public dir path, and we're going to use the path module from Node again, so it got imported at the top, and we're going to say join, and we're going to take the current directory. So once again, we're going to need that same underscore dir name, so it's file dir name, and we're going to import the meta underscore dir name. Let's use that value. It's quite a pity that it's not able to use something without having to create this function, and if there is, let me know in the comments below. I love learning. So let's actually point to that directory now. So we're in the root file, so we just need to go into the publics file. So it's a very easy one, and we're going to point to the static directory just like this. So now we're able to actually load the HTML file from our server. So if we were to see if our server is running, everything is running. So let's go back to our browser, and now if I were to go to html/home.html, we should actually serve that file, and there we can see the file. But we want to not do it like this. We want to, when you visit the home, so just the slash, our API should physically serve this file. So let's actually do that. That's quite easy. We're going to need to create an endpoint for that. So the endpoint won't be hello, it's just going to be the slash endpoint, and we want to send a file to the browser. And where would this file be? Well, let's say home page dir, and then we're going to use the path module again, underscore dir name, and here we are going to navigate into, let's see if I'm actually able to just add in html/home.html. I'm not sure. Let's check if this works. If I were to do a refresh and no such, okay, so we need to actually build the path. If I were to serve the public just like this, let's see if that works. Still not. Okay, so let's actually build the path. Home dir HTML, what do we call variable names? Home dir. Okay, and we can say path.join underscore dir name, and we want to go into the publics directory, and we want to go into the HTML directory and grab the home.html file. Okay, so now we have the home dir, and we can just add that as the path. Save, go back and serve, and here we can see our HTML file is being served. So now we want to add some logic to this HTML file. So first off, what we can do is take a coffee break. Then we can head over to our home.html and start building up a few things. So I'm going to have a div right here with a class name of container. Well, let's give it an ID of container. Okay. And inside of this container, we want a form with input that would get files. So we're going to have a form. Let's just give it an ID of form. And we're not going to use the actions to submit. We're going to use the button to submit, but it's important to add the ink type as multi-part form data. So this is very important for Multer, because Multer is looking for requests that have multi-part form data. So then we can add the input HTML, and this will be of type file, and we're going to allow multiple. We can also add a specific check to accept only, images and not PNGs or videos and stuff like that. So I'm not going to do that now. Let's give this a label to match this input, and this would be for the upload, and you can see select files to upload, and then this needs an ID that matches the form. Okay, so now we just need a button, and this button will have an ID of submit btn. and this will say submit. So now we have our little form, and then we need inside of this container still, we're going to need a place where we can output our links. So if you remember in the example, we had like a little block where we can download our links, and I'm going to give this an ID of download zone. And I'm going to copy this and create a new one for our notifications, and just this will contain our notifications. So I'm just going to call this block notification. So it will be empty divs, we'll populate them through JavaScript, and that should be it. So let's actually take a look at how this looks. It should be rather ugly, so this still looks ugly, so I'm quite zoomed in. Okay, so let's actually go ahead and add some CSS. So the nice thing is we're going to look at some new CSS where we have these nestings, so you don't need sass, which is quite nice. So let's actually select the title. Just want to give this an ID of title, container. Okay, so heading over to the style sheet, let's focus the title, and you want to give this title text align to the center, and we want to give some padding all around. Let's say of 2 rem. We also want to make the background color stand out, and just give it a very grayish background. That would be it for now. If we save that and go back, I just want to see, yeah, it gets picked up. But first we need to set or reset the basics that defaults, all the defaults. So I want margin to be 0, and padding to be 0, and box sizing to be border box. Okay, so we're back to this part, and let's set the font family for the entire project to be Arial, and the sans serif as the fallback. Okay, so this looks a little bit better. So now we want to target this container. So let's go ahead and focus the container. And within this container, we have the form, the labels, etc. So we actually don't need to give this form an ID. So let's remove that, because we're going to target that from our container using the nesting. And the button, we're going to need to target with JavaScript, so we're just giving it a value. This needs an ID because it will be targeted with the JavaScript as well. This doesn't have an ID. Okay. So these we want to target specifically. So, okay. Let's target the container. We want to give it a max width of 700 pixels. And we want to align it all in the middle. So actually, we don't want the container to have a max width. We want the form within the container. So we can just select the form using this syntax. So we taking the parent and taking the form. So the parent is the container, and taking the form element within the parent. And we want to give it a max width of 700 pixels. And we want to margin auto, so we want it to be centered in the middle. Okay, so there we get some formatting. Let's take a look at how things are looking. So we've got this centered now. So now we want to target this download zone, so we can actually target it within the container as well, or we can just go outside of the container. Let's do it inside of the container just for fun. So we want to select download zone, and we also want to give it that same properties. So let's actually add it as a value there as well. Save. And we want to give both of these a background color and padding the same way. Okay. If I go back and refresh, we can see they have the styling set, but now I want to add a few different pieces of styling. Okay, so now we're targeting that zone, download zone, and you know what, I'm actually going to move this outside and give it some separate styles. I know we're going to have some duplication of styles here, so I want it to have the same thing. same, pretty much everything. But I want the form to have padding at the bottom. So we have padding at margin. So let's actually add padding top with 2 rem. This would space it out at the top. And then we want to add some margin below the form. So below the form, we're going to target the bottom property. So that is the top, right, and the bottom will be 2 rem, and left will also be auto save. So we have some spacing now, and inside of the form I want it to be display of flex with a flex direction of column, and I want to add a gap of 8 pixels between each of the elements. Okay, so we have something like this. It would work. So let's actually target that button. So we can get the button by ID. So within the form, we want to target the button. Still not sure, my indentation seems off because when I save it goes back. But when I use tab, it's not right. So anyway, I'm just going to continue. And we want to give this button some padding. At the top, let's just say 8 pixels, see how that looks. We remove the border of none because I don't like that border. You can give this button a hover effect, and we can say whenever you hover, we want to make the opacity 0.8, and then we want whenever the button is disabled, because we will disable the button, we want the opacity to be 0.3, so it's clear. And then we can add a cursor pointer to this button, but if it is disabled, then the cursor will be not allowed. Okay, so let's actually head over and refresh. Looks like this. We need to change the background color of this button and the color. So let's say background color will be black, and then the color will be white. Okay, if we go back and refresh, there we have, and you can see the hover effect happening. Okay, so this is all good. Now we have our download zone, and now we want to add some logic to our little front end. So we do that in the JavaScript part. So first we need to select this button, because this button we want to add an event listener, and then we're going to take whatever files are located in this input, and then we're going to send that to our Express backend, which is going to handle it from there. So let's actually go ahead and do that. So let's select the submit button. So we're going to do that with the document query selector, and the button has an ID, so we can say submit btn, and on the submit btn I want to add an event listener, which will be a click event, and this will have an event, and then we want to just say e.prevent default, because otherwise it's going to submit the form and it's going to reload the page. We don't want that page reload, so we can just say console.log submitting form. Let's see if this works. If I go to my front end, open up the DevTools, do a reload, and I submit, we can see we get this submitting form value printed out here. Okay, so that is working. Now we need to add the rest of the logic to actually handle the submit. So first off, let's actually grab the input element. So file input and document.query selector. So this video we are just learning, a little bit of JavaScript, which is always nice. You can see we can do all of these things without having to use React. So let's get the value const files equals input.value, or it will be the files. So we want to get all of the files property. So we can have a check if there is no files. So if files.length, which will be an array, type of an array, so we can see these files, it returns a file list, which is iterable. So we can check the length. If the length is equal to 0, then we want to return. And let's just add an alert for now. So we can add an alert, no files selected, and it won't continue. So what is it complaining about here? Unnecessary return. Okay, that's fine for now. Let's go back to the browser, do a refresh. Important to do refreshes because we need to load the new JavaScript file. And if we submit, it's going to say no files were selected. If I go ahead and select the file and I hit submit, we can see nothing happens. So it's actually trying to submit it now. So let's console log out these files to see what we get. So if we get past this part, we can console log the files, reload, choose a file, console log, and here we can see the file list in its length is of 1. And we can take a look at that file, and it has the image PNG name. And we have the size, the type, everything that we need. Okay, so we're going to load these files one by one into a form data object. So first we're going to create that form data, which is new form data. And we're going to take this form data and append to it to the files property. And this is where it's important, right? This name needs to match the name we used in the middleware. So in the middleware, we specified the field name to be files. Well, this is where it's important. If you name that field name something different, then you need to name it the same over here. And then we want to add all of these files. So we're going to say for const file of files. So a little bit of a for loop. And then I want to add each one of these files to this form data object. Okay, so now we have that. Now we actually want to do the try catch part. So this is where something could fail, because here we're going to talk to the server. So first of all, we want to use the fetch API. So we're going to use the fetch API, and we're going to go to what endpoint. Let's call this endpoint resize images, and we give it the object, which will ask for a method, and this will be a post method. And we can provide the data in the body, which will just be this form data object. So we can then await and check the results. So we can say res equals await fetch, and if the fetch was okay, on the res there will be an okay field. If it's not okay, then we once again just want to return and do an alert, something went wrong. Else, if all was good, then we should be able to parse the body data. So we can say data equals await res.json. So this is how the fetch function works. Fetch module works is okay. We can't await because we need to add this as a async event handler. Okay, so this will return the data, and then we can console log out that data. So for now, let's actually just log out an error if there is an error, and we can say alert, once again, something went wrong. We can create our own notifications in just a sec, which will populate in this div over here. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and refresh, and let's check out the network tab, choose a file, and hit submit. Something went wrong, 404, so we don't have an endpoint that is called resize images yet, so we're going to create that now. I just want to take a look at the content type. So the content type is multi-part form data, which is correct, and then the preview, so there's nothing in the body, so that we still need to get to load that information into the body. So something with my form data is off. So here we are creating the form data. Here we are submitting it to the body. Something here is not happening correctly. I'm not quite sure why it is not loading these files. So it would loop through. Let's actually console log each one of those files. So it's not doing the append and not sending it as the body. So let's try again. Something went wrong. Let's do a refresh. Maybe I forgot to refresh. And send. Oh, there we have payload. Okay, so now we have files. I might have forgot to do the refresh, but now we can see also in the logs, it actually logged out that file. Okay, so we got this working. I'm just going to remove that console log. So now it's submitting to an endpoint that doesn't exist. So let's actually go ahead and create this endpoint and handle the file uploads. So this is pretty much it from the front end. We're going to add some notifications in here as well. So let's actually do that quickly. Okay, so we're going to need to add notifications to this notifications div. And this is quite easy. We're going to select that notifications div, notifications, document query selector, and we're going to select the notifications. Okay, and here what we want to do is whenever we have the alerts, where we have the alerts, we want to add in our own notification. We don't want to use the browser. That's boring, right? So I'm going to create a new function, which is toast notification. Okay, and this notification will receive a few arguments. The first one will be the type. The second one will be the message. And let's just have a time function as well, or a time value. So if the notification needs to disappear after some time. Okay, and what we want to happen here, we first want to create a paragraph. So we can say p element is equals to document.create an element, which will be the p tag. So we're going to create a paragraph tag, and on this p element we want to add the inner HTML text to be the message that we pass in. We want the p element to contain a class list, and we want to add a value which is of type notification as well. Let's do that again. So it's complaining here, probably we don't have that class. So what does this do? Okay, we don't need to set it equal like this. It's like a function. Okay, and then the type will be the next class that we add. So of type error, type warning, type success, all of those type of stuff, right? Okay, so now we've created our element. Now we want to append that to our notifications. So our notifications, we're going to select that div and we're going to say append, and we want to append our p element. But first, we don't want notifications to be stacked. So we first want to clear everything in the inner HTML. So let's just set that equals to nothing, and then we append the child. Okay, and if it has a timer, so we append it, and we can say if there is a time and it is greater than, let's say, 0, then we can have a timeout that runs after that specific time and then removes the element again, or clears everything within our notifications. So now we can use this toast notification. So we haven't set up the CSS for these two notifications class and the type class, but we'll do that in just a second. So first off, when we have an error over here, we want to say toast notification, and the type of this notification will be error, and the message will be no files selected, no files selected, and then the timer will be 5000 milliseconds. Okay, so we can do this for this part over here as well. So we can say something went wrong. Then we can copy that line and just reuse it over here as well. Okay, so there we just created our own notification. So let's actually create the styles for this. So inside of our notifications container, we want to select any of the paragraphs, any of the paragraph tags, and we want to text align it to the center. And then we also want to check if this paragraph tag has a class of error. So this would actually be notification, so we can just say dot notification, and remember this should be dot because it's a class notification. Okay, and then whenever we have an error class, we can style that appropriately, and we have two more classes. So we have the info and the success. So how are these going to look different? Well, it's mainly going to be the background color. So let's add the color for all of them will be black. So the text color. The background color for the info will be, let's just have some blue, like that blue. And then the background color for success will be some green. Just add that green, basic stuff. And then the background color for the error will be red. Okay, so there we have our notifications set up. So once we actually run this try catch, I want to start a notification here as well, but it shouldn't have expiration until it is actually successful. So this will be a type of success, or info rather, because we're going to say processing with ... and it will have no time, so it won't be removed until we add a new notification, which will happen once we are successful at the end. So we can say success, and this would be image resize done, and after 5000 milliseconds it will disappear. Okay, so there we have our little notification setup. Let's actually test that out quickly. We can rerun this. So currently, if I were to just submit, you can see no file selected. If I actually select a file and it disappears after 5 seconds. If I select a file and run, we saw a blue one for a brief second, and then it turned red for something went wrong, and after 5 seconds it disappears. Okay, so the positioning of the notifications is wrong. I wanted to position right in this corner or in this corner, so I'm just gonna move it to this corner up here. And if you remember, there's a container, so a container div, and we want to add a property to this container div. So that would make it relative. So we can say on this container we want the position to be relative, and then for the notifications container we can say the position will be absolute, and it will hit the top corner and stick to the left side. And if we refresh and do it now, do a refresh, you can see it's sticking up here right now. So one thing about the notifications, I want to add some padding. So let's add padding all around. So top 8 pixels, and to the side let's give it 2 rems, give it a nice width, and resize, and we can see that looks a little bit better. Okay, so now our application is pretty much zoomed out all the way, so we can see our nice notifications. No files were selected. Okay, so there we have our own little stuff running. Let's take another coffee sip. Okay, so that's it for the CSS, HTML. The JavaScript, we're going to add the download zones in just a second, but let's actually work on the routes in the backend. So this we're going to start refactoring. Okay, so there we have that part, and we're going to add some more middleware, and this will be the middleware for the routes. So anything coming on to slash will redirect to the routes function, which we'll create in just a second. And inside of our routes folder, index.js, we're going to import the router from Express, and we're going to create a new router and set that equals to the router. And then we're going to export this as default router. And on the router, so this will actually be renamed to router. If we import that, you can see it imported from our routes.index.js, and then we can start adding routes. So the first one will be our get request route over here. So let's cut this out and remove it from here and just paste it in here. Okay, so now we have it pasted in here, and we need to actually bring in this path module as well as the dir name. But I'm not going to do that now because I'm going to do another step of refactoring and add this function inside of a controller. So we can say get home page will be the function's name, and inside of our controllers we're going to export a function, an asynchronous function called get home page, and it will be this function right here. So we just pasted it in here, import the path, and let's just bring in this module file dir name again. Okay, so now this should all still work. We import this function, and you can see it got imported from our controllers. Okay, so all of this is set. So now if I go back and do a refresh, no such file directory found. Okay, so the publics folder has changed. So from where it is currently, so currently in this controller function, we are navigating into the public directory, which is one step back, and then inside of the HTML. If I refresh, now it works again. So what I've done here is, because we're in this file, we need to step one out and then into the public and then into the HTML. So we just needed to do a step back. Okay, so that's our first controller. The next route that we need is a post route, and this will be the route that resizes images. And we're going to add our uploads middleware to this route because we want to upload the images when we submit it here. And then we're going to handle post resizing of images. So we're going to create a handler that will handle this route. So first we upload the images, then we have a handler that continues on. So let's go ahead and create that controller handler. So export async function, post resize images, and we get the request and response. And for now, let's just return res.json foo bar. Okay, very simple for now. Let's just see if we get the response in the front end. Okay, so now we need to import it over here. We got it imported. Now this upload middleware is actually going to take the multipart form data that gets sent to the server and add and load it into the uploads folder. So we should actually see the files getting uploaded here right now. So let's do a refresh. Okay, something is wrong with the server. Let's just check. Cannot run module middleware name imports. Oh, so this import is not right. Let's actually try and re-import it. There we go. And if we look at the server now, everything seems fine. Let's do a refresh. Okay, so that's all good. Let's go to our network tab. And now if I actually were to select the file and hit submit, something went wrong, still not found. So resize images. So why is it still not getting this route? So let's take a look. Let's close up this file. Oh, we need a slash in front here. So resize images. Take a look at it now. If we were to clear this and hit submit, now we get image resize done, which is not the case. But we can now see that we get a status code and the response is foo bar. So we are hitting that, we are sending the file. So if we take a look at our uploads directory, uploads, and there we have a file. So currently it doesn't save it with the extension, so we won't be able to really view it unless we add an extension to it. So let's do that. .png, and if we open it up, image is not loaded correctly. Okay, so we can't do that now. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this file that got uploaded and we're going to resize it using sharp. So in this handler, we're gonna extract the file. And how do we do that? Well, we can console.log. Let's actually keep the return for now. We can console.log the request.files, because when we use Multer and set up this middleware for the route, so this middleware parses that file and adds its information to the request.files property. So here we can see it contains files property of the data transfer object is a list of the files in the drag operation. Okay, so let's console log that out. Let's take a look at what we get. So I'm just going to hit this submit again. And here we can see we get this printed out. So we have an array of files, and there's only one file, and we can see the file name, which is this weird UUID that gets generated. So there's the uploaded file. We can see the mount type, the encoding, the original name, the file name, the field name, and then the path to where it is stored. So the destination is what we're going to be using. So here's the path, and it's pretty much the destination, but it has the file in as well. So now we want to read that file from the destination. So we can actually use that. If we select the first element and we select the path, we can use that path with Node.js file system to get this file, load its buffer into sharp module, which we'll install. I don't think we've installed it yet. Oh, we have installed it. We didn't add the types for it. I'm not sure if it's with its own types, but then we're gonna load that file. We can actually use that path and provide that path to our module, and then save it into an outputs folder. So currently we don't have an outputs folder, so let's actually create that. Directory outputs. So we have our uploads and our outputs. So inside of our uploads, we currently deleted all the images now, the uploaded images, and now we want to start using it from here. So I want to just add some try catches around these. Try catch. So if something were to happen, we get some logs. So I'm going to add that back. Else we want some console.log of that error, and we want to respond with a status of 500 because something wrong happened on the backend. So we can have an error field that says server error. Okay, so we want the same try catch situation down here. Try. Okay, so if something were to happen, we log the error, catch the error, and then we just send back a error response. Okay, so this is getting there. So now we're going to need to build out the logic to actually optimize the file. And then once that is done, the front end needs to get an array of links to download from. So that will be the response at the end of the day. We can say download links, and this will be an array of file names. So we can give it a name of the original image, image1.png, image2.png, something like this, right? And then this will respond to the client, and the client will take this piece of JSON, get the download links, and then add it to the download zone. So let's actually do that before we handle the sharp part, which should be the last part of the build to get this to work. And then we're going to need a route to actually download the file. So we're going to have an async function that would be get download file by ID. And we'll get the request and response again. And let's just copy this for now. And we're going to respond just with foo bar once again. So this will actually then load from a specific ID, it will get that file by ID from the outputs directory, and it would send it as a downloadable to the client. So we can use the download from Express, but for now let's just respond with JSON. Okay, we're going to need to use this download get download file by ID in our routes. We're going to have a router.get function, and this will have a download endpoint and a file ID. Okay, and we can just add in that. Okay, so now this should work. So if I were to actually visit this endpoint /download and then some ID, we get foo bar. Okay, so that endpoint is now working. So the next part we need to do is the sharp of handling that image. So the best thing would be to create a function which we send that specific endpoint to, or that specific file path, and then sharp will pull that image, do some logic with it, and upload it to the uploads folder, or write it to the uploads folder. Okay, so what is going to happen here? Well, the request.files is an array which we want to loop through and take each of these files, optimize them, and then write them to the outputs directory. So looping through them, so let's get them. Files equals request.files. So here we have all of the files. Now I want to loop through all of them. So for const file of files, we want to do something with each of these files. The first thing we want to do is use our optimize function that we'll create now. So we're going to say await reduce file size, and we're going to provide it the file. But we also want to provide it the output, so where it should save this file to or write this file to. So output file to a specific place. So output file dir. Let's create that output file dir, which will be path.join. And once again, we need that __ dir name. And we want it to output from where we are currently in this directory. It needs to move one step out. So we are in the controllers, so it's in the source file then, and another step out into the outputs folder. So it's 2 steps out, and then into the outputs folder. And then we want to give it the same name as the file name or original name, because I believe the original name has the file extension in it as well. The original name, yes, it has .png. So we need to create this reduce function, and then once we reduce the file size, that means it's now in this directory, and we want to delete it from the uploads because we don't want this uploads directory to grow. So we can create another function called delete file, and then we pass it in the directory. So the file dot path. So this will also be the file dot path because it's pointing to the same. The one gets optimized and then write it to this directory, and then we delete it after it's optimized. Okay, and then once we've done that, we're going to need to build some download links. So we're going to need an array here called download links, and then this will just push a new string with that file original name, because we're naming it the same thing when we write it to the outputs. So when we send the links to get downloaded, it will be of the same name, but it will point to the outputs directory. So this will make sense as we start putting it all together with these functions now. Okay, so in the utils, I want to create two new files. One will be the lead file, and the other one will be, what did we call this? Reduce file size. Okay, in the reduce file size, we're going to use the sharp package. So we're going to say import sharp from sharp. And we then want to export default a function that will handle the file reduce. And it is expecting the file path as well as the output path. And then we can return the sharp where we provide it with the file path to the file we want to do something with. And then we want to convert it, or first we want to resize the image. So there's a function called resize. It gets chained, and then all we want to resize is the width. We want the width to be no greater than 1080p pixels. And there's another property without enlargement. Without enlargement, set to true. And what this means is do not enlarge if the width or height are already less than the specified dimensions. So if it's less than 1080, then don't try and make it 1080. But if it's greater than 1080, so if it's like a 6000 width image, which is way too big for most type of situations, then just bring it down to 1080p, which dramatically reduces the size. Okay, so once we've done the resize, I'm just gonna move this down here. Then we want to format the image to PNG. So PNG is usually good for the web. I think so. So we can format this to any other format. So you can see there's a bunch of formats, but I'm going to choose PNG for now. And then once we've done that, we want to say PNG, and we want to take the quality and reduce it to 85%. So this is where the reduction of the file size actually happens. It's with this part obviously, and with this part. So here it does a lot of the size difference when we do that. So you can make this 90 if 85 is too much, but usually 85 is quite good. And then right at the end, we want to say file to file, which will write this to a specific file, and we want to write it to the output path. So this is the entire logic of the file reduction. So this is the meat of what's actually happening, and this sharp package is just brilliant. And play around with it, go check out the documentation, and yeah, there's quite a few things that you can do with it as well. So if we upload a JPEG, it's going to format it to a PNG and then reduce the quality of the PNG to 85%, and which is still really good quality. And then we have a write to file function, and we just return all of that back over here. So let's import that, and the last thing we need to do is create this delete file, and this is also very easy. So in this file we can say export default delete file, and all that we're going to do here is return the unlink from the FS promises. So we import unlink from the file system promises, and then we're going to just provide it the path. So file path, and provide the path to that file which it will unlink. Export default function. It returns a promise void, and we can import it here. Okay, so with that done, this should work. So let's actually take a look if it works. So now whenever I upload a file, it's going to take these files, it's going to loop through each of these files. It's creating an output path for each of the files based on their original name, and it's moving it to the outputs directory. Then we give this to the reduce file size, which runs the sharp logic of taking the file path. It loads that file into this module, it resizes it, width, it formats it to PNG, it reduces the quality to 85%, and then it writes it back to the output path. And then once that is done, we go to the delete file, which unlinks, which is the Node.js way of path refers to a symbolic link, and then the link is removed, so it kind of deletes that file. And then we take the download links array, and then we push a new string to it, which would be the original name. So I just want to see the format of the original name. It doesn't have a slash in front of it. So what we can actually do is, before we push it in here, we can make it a string literal, add a slash, and add it in like this. Okay, so let's take a look. What is our error that we're getting here? Reduce file size, utils, request module does not provide an export default name. Let's take a look. It's complaining about this file. Export default function. So I'm guessing that's something that should fix if we just restart. Reduce file size. I must be calling something wrong. Reduce file size. Reduce file size. Export default function. Reduce file size. I don't think I saved this file, but now it's working again. Okay, so let's close it up. Let's go back to our browser. Let's do a refresh over here. Now if I were to select an image and submit, you can see it's processing and image resize is done. We can see in the preview we have a download links, which is pointing to that file. So now we need to actually render out that download links and connect that to the download route. So let's actually go to the outputs directory quickly. And in the outputs directory, we now see this file, which is a lot smaller, and it is the original file name. Okay, so now once we've responded back here, we need the front end to actually handle that download links. So it needs to handle this JSON array, or the array in the JSON that gets returned. Okay, so let's close that up. We're going to be working on this endpoint now, but first let's get the front end to work correctly. So in our scripts, here we are console logging out the data, and this data contains the download links. So let's actually destructure download links from the data. And if there is no download links, then something went wrong. So then we don't need to do anything. If download links, if it doesn't exist, okay, let's just say it would exist. So I'm not going to handle that edge case now. But then we want to add it to download zone. So we want to take these links and add it to the download zone. So I'm going to create a new function, create downloadable links. And this function will then take in the download links array. So it will take in the links, and it's going to create, for each of those links, it's going to create an anchor tag that would point to that endpoint. So let's go for const link in of links. We can then say it should create an anchor tag. So const a tag equals document dot create element, which will be an a tag, and this a tag will have a href property that we're going to set equal slash download, and then the ID, which will be the link. So we actually don't need to add this. Now that I see I'm adding in a slash here, so in the controller when I add it to the array, I don't need to do this. I can just add the name. Okay. Close this up. Focus only on this. Okay, so now we have the A tag. We add a href property to it, and now we want to add some inner text. Download image here, and we can actually add the image name if you want, or just keep it a generic text. I'm gonna do that for now. Okay, and then we want to append it to our download zone, which we need to select. So we can say download zone document dot query selector download zone. So to this div, we want to append our newly created A tag. Create downloadable links, and we provided the downloadable links. So now, if I'm not wrong, this should work. So let's actually try it out. It won't actually download the image yet because our route for download file, which has the download path, so we can see we're pointing to the /download path, and then we're giving it the ID, or the file ID, which is just the name, right? And then we have this get download file by ID, and all we want to do here is say download, which is a response type or response function, and we want it to download to a specific path, so the file path. And in order to structure this file path, we use the node path module again, and we need to go to the output directory from our current location. So it's back to slots, back to directories, into the outputs directory, and then the file name. And the file name we can get from the route like this, file ID. So from the route, we can say request.params, and then we can destructure file ID. This will then give us a downloadable file. And if something were to go wrong, so this will have an error. And if there is an error, we want to respond with a status of 401 for bad request, and then say JSON error, something went wrong, downloading file. Okay, else we don't really want to do anything other than that. So this is pretty much it. So let's actually go ahead and refresh and try this out. I'm gonna upload a file, submit. It's processing. Processing is done. We see an image here. If you look at the bottom of the screen, we can see it's pointing to localhost 3000 download with that image name. If we click download image, you can see it prompts us to download. I'm just gonna delete all of this quickly. Okay, if I try and download it again, I can download it, and if I open this file in the directory, there we have our downloaded file. So now let's actually try and do this with multiple files. So I'm going to choose the other files as well. I'm just going to hit a refresh. So once it's successful, we can actually clear out this input. So let's select these 4, open. So we have 4 files. We clear it and submit. We can see it's going to take a little bit longer now. So we're going to see processing. And once it's done, it should output 4 links. So we have 4 links, but they're not beneath each other. So this we can fix quickly. That's a quick fix. Inside of the CSS, public CSS, download zone, we want this to display flex, and the flex direction should be column, and there should be a gap of 8 pixels between each of the links. If I were to do a refresh and submit 3 of them quickly, submit, we can see all the links below each other and each of them pointing to a different image. So that is it. Let's actually go ahead and finish this off by disabling this button and clearing the form. Okay, so we've already set the button disabled how it should look, but we haven't actually toggled it to be disabled. So once we start the download, so once we get this notification, we want to take the submit button and its disabled prop should be true. And we can have a finally, so whenever it fails or it is done, we can set the disabled to false. And then when it's done, so when it's done with this part, so not when it failed, we can clear the input. So we can say file inputs dot value is equal to nothing. Or is it the files? I'm guessing I need to set the files to nothing. Yeah. Because it doesn't have a value, it has files. Okay, so let's try that out. Refresh. Select all of them. So when I submit, we can see we can't do anything else. We have processing, and once it's done, these 5 files should be cleared and it should be outputted correctly. Something went wrong. Let's take a look at what went wrong. Seems like the request was successful, but something went wrong. I'm guessing clearing the files, because this didn't work. Okay, so it is the value, so it's not files. We want to set the value to an empty string. So that is what happened with the undefined for the files. So let's try it again. Let's do a refresh here. Select all of these files, go. And there we go. All the files was cleared, image resize done, and it's cleared. So now there's no file, so I can't hit submit again, and we can download all of these files and view them. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was just a little project I thought I would share with you guys. If you like this type of videos, I would love to make more of them. I'm not focusing too much on looks, just getting functionality out there, and this is quite a useful application to build. So let me know what you think, and till next time, cheers.